Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to drift away to Daniel in Babylon, faith in the lion's den and the fiery furnace? Welcome to Easy Drift Sleep. Tonight we find out, one quiet detail at a time. If these stories bring you peace, a quick subscribe means we can keep making them for you. Now settle in, slow your breathing, and let your mind wander. The soft, fading light of a desert twilight begins to paint the sky with hues of lavender and deep rose, casting long, wavering shadows across the ancient, sun-baked walls of what was once a bustling marketplace, now quiet save for the distant, rhythmic bleating of a few last sheep being herded home, and the gentle whisper of a breeze carrying the faint, earthy scent of damp clay and the sweet, heavy perfume of night-blooming jasmine from distant palace gardens, a quiet moment as the world settles into its evening rhythm, inviting a peaceful stillness to descend upon the heart and mind. Long, long ago, in a time when the world was shaped by the rise and fall of mighty empires, and the destinies of nations were often decided by the whims of powerful kings, there lived a young man named Daniel. He was not born into the opulent grandeur of Babylon, with its towering ziggurats and its famed hanging gardens, but rather in the ancient land of Judah, in the city of Jerusalem, a place steeped in history and reverence, where the temple of the Lord stood as a beacon of faith. But the winds of change, often harsh and unforgiving, had swept through his homeland, bringing with them the thunderous might of King Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian army. This formidable force, with its chariots rumbling like distant storms and its legions stretching across the horizon, had laid siege to Jerusalem, a city known for its resilience, but ultimately, like so many others, it had fallen. In the aftermath of such a conquest, it was the custom of the victorious king to assert his dominance not only by seizing territory and treasure, but also by taking the most promising and intelligent young people from the conquered lands. These young men, often of noble birth or exceptional intellect, were brought back to the conqueror's own court to be educated in the language, literature, and customs of their new masters. This was a strategic move designed to assimilate them, to turn potential future leaders into loyal servants of the empire, weaving their talents into the very fabric of Babylonian power. Daniel was one of these young men, chosen not for his strength in battle, but for his keen mind, his discerning spirit, and his noble lineage. He was taken from the familiar, comforting landscapes of Judah, from the sun-drenched hills and the scent of olive groves, and transported across vast, arid plains to the sprawling, vibrant, and utterly foreign city of Babylon. Imagine the journey itself, weeks, perhaps months, of travel under a relentless sun, the dust of the ancient roads clinging to every garment, the night spent beneath an unfamiliar canopy of stars, far from the familiar constellations of home. The young men, bound together by their shared fate, would have spoken in hushed tones of what awaited them, their hearts a mixture of fear and a quiet, youthful curiosity. And then, the first glimpse of Babylon, a city unlike any they had ever seen. Its walls, rumored to be so wide that 2 chariots could pass abreast upon them, would have risen majestically from the flat plains, glinting in the harsh desert light. The Euphrates River, a lifeblood for the empire, would have flowed through its heart, its waters reflecting the colossal structures that lined its banks. Upon their arrival, Daniel and his companions, among whom were 3 close friends named Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were placed under the care of Ashpenaz, the chief of the king's eunuchs. This was a man of considerable authority and responsibility, tasked with overseeing the education and well-being of these royal captives. Their new life began with a rigorous program of instruction. 3 years were allotted for them to learn the language and literature of the Chaldeans, the dominant people group within the Babylonian Empire. This was no small task, for the Chaldean language, a form of Aramaic, would have been vastly different from the Hebrew they had spoken since childhood, with its complex cuneiform script and its intricate grammatical structures. They would have spent long hours in sun-drenched courtyards or dimly lit scribal schools, their fingers tracing unfamiliar symbols on clay tablets, their minds grappling with new concepts and philosophies. Beyond the intellectual demands, there was another, perhaps more subtle, challenge: assimilation into Babylonian culture. This included adopting new names, a common practice to signify a change of identity and allegiance. Hananiah became Shadrach, Mishael became Meshach, and Azariah became Abednego. Daniel himself was given the name Belshazzar, meaning Bel protect his life, a name that honored Bel, one of the principal gods of the Babylonian pantheon. These new names, with their foreign sounds and their connections to unfamiliar deities, would have served as a constant reminder of their displacement, a quiet echo of the lives they had left behind. Part of their new regimen also involved a daily allowance of food and wine from the king's own table. This was a privilege, a mark of their special status, ensuring they were well-nourished and strong, fit for service in the royal court. The king's food would have been rich and varied, a stark contrast to the simpler fare they might have been accustomed to in Judah. Meats, often prepared with elaborate spices, rich sauces, and perhaps even offered to Babylonian idols, would have been plentiful. Fine wines, aged in clay amphorae, would have flowed freely. For many, this would have been a welcome indulgence, a taste of luxury previously unimaginable. But for Daniel, and for his 3 friends, this presented a quiet dilemma, a matter of deep personal conviction. Their faith, rooted in the ancient laws and traditions of their people, forbade them from consuming certain foods, particularly those that were considered unclean or that had been dedicated to pagan gods. To partake of the king's rich provisions would not only be a violation of their dietary laws but, more profoundly, a compromise of their spiritual principles. It was a subtle test, a quiet challenge to their resolve, far from the roar of battle or the clamor of public debate. So, Daniel, with a quiet determination that belied his youth, approached Ashpenaz, the chief eunuch, with a humble request. He asked for permission not to defile himself with the king's food and wine. Imagine the scene: the young man, perhaps still slender from his journey, standing before the powerful official, whose word carried the weight of the king's authority. Ashpenaz, a man accustomed to obedience, might have regarded Daniel with a mixture of surprise and concern. He genuinely liked Daniel, for the Lord had granted Daniel favor and compassion in the eyes of the chief eunuch. But he also feared the king's wrath. "I am afraid of my lord the king," Ashpenaz might have said, his voice low and cautious, "who has assigned your food and drink. Why should he see you looking worse than the other young men your age? You would endanger my head with the king." The consequences of displeasing Nebuchadnezzar were severe, often involving swift and brutal punishment. Daniel, however, did not press the issue directly with Ashpenaz. Instead, he turned to the guard, or overseer, whom Ashpenaz had appointed over him and his 3 friends. This man, perhaps a less imposing figure, might have been more approachable. Daniel proposed a simple test, a quiet experiment. "Please test your servants for 10 days, he suggested, his voice calm and respectful. "Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the other young men who eat the king's food, and treat your servants in accordance with what you see." It was a reasonable proposal, a small window of opportunity to prove their point without directly defying the king's decree. The guard, perhaps intrigued by Daniel's quiet confidence, or perhaps simply weary of the discussion, agreed to this unusual arrangement. For 10 days, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego ate only vegetables and drank only water. Their meals would have been simple, perhaps lentils, grains, herbs, and fruits, the kind of fare that sustained the common people, prepared without the rich oils or forbidden ingredients of the royal kitchen. The other young men, meanwhile, continued to feast on the lavish provisions from the king's table, enjoying succulent meats and potent wines. The air in the dining halls would have been thick with the aromas of roasted lamb and spice stews, a constant temptation for the 4 friends. But they held firm, their resolve unwavering, sustained by their faith and their quiet commitment to their principles. At the end of the 10 days, the guard observed them closely. And to his surprise, and perhaps to the quiet astonishment of others who had been watching, Daniel and his friends looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who had been eating the king's rich food. Their skin might have had a clearer, more vibrant tone, their eyes brighter, their steps more energetic. The simple, clean diet, free from the heavy, often indigestible richness of the royal fare, had evidently served them well. Seeing this undeniable evidence, the guard, without further hesitation, continued to provide them with vegetables and water, removing the king's rich food and wine from their daily allowance. It was a small victory, a testament to their quiet faith and a sign of divine favor. But their blessings extended beyond mere physical well-being. God granted these for young men knowledge and understanding in all kinds of literature and learning. Imagine the hours spent poring over ancient texts, deciphering complex scripts, absorbing the vast accumulated wisdom of the Chaldeans. While others might have struggled with the intricacies of mathematics or the subtleties of astronomy, Daniel and his friends grasped these subjects with remarkable ease. Their minds, clear and sharp, absorbed information like fertile ground drinks in rain. And to Daniel, in particular, God gave an extraordinary gift, the ability to understand visions and dreams of all kinds. This was a rare and profound talent, setting him apart even from his gifted companions, marking him as someone destined for a unique role in the unfolding story of kings and empires. At the end of the 3 years of training, a period that must have felt both long and fleeting, Ashpenaz brought all the young men before King Nebuchadnezzar. The king, a formidable figure whose presence commanded respect and awe, would have sat upon his throne, perhaps adorned with jewels and fine Babylonian fabrics, his gaze sweeping over the assembled youth. He questioned them, testing their knowledge, their understanding, and their readiness for service. And in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king questioned them, he found Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. This was a staggering assessment, for the Babylonian court was renowned for its wise men, its astrologers, its interpreters of omens and dreams. Yet these for young men, exiles from a conquered land, surpassed them all. So Daniel and his friends entered the king's service, their talents now fully recognized and valued. Daniel, in particular, continued in the royal court until the first year of King Cyrus, a testament to his enduring wisdom and his unwavering integrity through the reigns of multiple monarchs. Their journey from captives to trusted advisors was complete, a remarkable transformation guided by their steadfast faith. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, for all his power and his vast empire, was a man often troubled by the mysteries of the night. One particular night, he had a dream, a vivid and disturbing vision that stirred his spirit deeply, leaving him restless and unable to sleep. The images, though fleeting, had left a profound impression, a sense of foreboding that gnawed at his peace of mind. He awoke with a start, the lingering echoes of the dream swirling in his thoughts, yet the precise details eluded him, like smoke dissipating in the morning air. He knew he had dreamed something significant, something that held a message, but he could not recall what it was. Disturbed by this unsettling experience, the king summoned all the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers of Babylon. These were the wise men of his court, the interpreters of signs and omens, the guardians of ancient knowledge. They came, perhaps in their flowing robes, their faces etched with the seriousness of their profession, and stood before the king. "I have had a dream," Nebuchadnezzar declared, his voice perhaps edged with impatience, "and my spirit is troubled because I want to know what it means." The Chaldeans, speaking in Aramaic, a language they shared with Daniel, responded with a practiced deference. "May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." This was their usual procedure. The king would recount his dream, and they, with their arcane knowledge and their various divinatory techniques, would then offer an interpretation. But Nebuchadnezzar, in his deep agitation, had set a new, unprecedented challenge. "This is what I have decided," he announced, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and interpret it, you will receive gifts and rewards and great honor from me. So tell me the dream and interpret it." A ripple of unease, perhaps even fear, would have passed through the assembly of wise men. This was an impossible demand. How could they interpret a dream if the king himself could not remember it? They pleaded with him again, trying to explain the impossibility of his request. "Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it." They were trying to adhere to their established methods to bring order to the king's distress. But Nebuchadnezzar was unyielding. "I am certain that you are trying to gain time, because you know that this is what I have decided," he retorted, his suspicion growing. "If you do not tell me the dream, there is only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me." The Chaldeans, now truly desperate, made one last attempt to reason with the king. "There is no one on earth who can do what the king asks," they exclaimed, their voices perhaps rising in genuine distress. "No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king except the gods, and they do not live among humans. Their words, though true, only serve to further incense the king. His frustration boiled over into a furious rage. He gave an order that all the wise men of Babylon were to be executed. The decree was issued, a terrifying sentence that would sweep away not only the Chaldeans who had failed him, but all who bore the title of wise man in his vast kingdom, including Daniel and his 3 friends. The order went out, and men began to be put to death. Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, a man whose duty it was to carry out such grim commands, went to Daniel's house to seize him and his friends. Daniel, with his usual calm and discerning manner, spoke to Arioch, his voice respectful but firm. "Why is the king's decree so urgent?" he asked, seeking to understand the root of this sudden, terrifying command. Arioch, perhaps seeing Daniel's intelligence and sensing his quiet strength, explained the whole matter to him, the king's forgotten dream, his troubled spirit, and the impossible demand he had placed upon his wise men, leading to the decree of their execution. When Daniel heard this, he did not panic. Instead, he went into the king and asked for time, promising that he would interpret the dream for him. Imagine the sheer audacity, the quiet courage of this young man, an exile, to approach the furious king and make such a claim. Yet, Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps sensing something different in Daniel's demeanor, or perhaps simply desperate for a solution, granted him the time he requested. Daniel then returned to his house and explained the whole matter to his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery, so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. They understood the gravity of the situation, not just for themselves, but for all the wise men, whose lives hung by a thread. So, they gathered, perhaps in a quiet corner of their dwelling, and turned their hearts and minds to prayer, seeking divine intervention in a situation that human wisdom could not resolve. That night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. The images, clear and distinct, unfolded before his inner eye, showing him the king's dream and its profound meaning. When he awoke, a sense of profound gratitude filled his heart. He blessed the God of heaven, his voice perhaps a quiet whisper in the stillness of the night. Praise be to the name of God forever and ever, wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons, he deposes kings and raises up others. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things, he knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank and praise you, God of my ancestors, you have given me wisdom and power, you have made known to me what we asked of you, you have made known to us the dream of the king. With this profound revelation, Daniel knew what he had to do. He went to Arioch, the commander whom the king had appointed to execute the wise men of Babylon, and said to him, "Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him." Arioch, relieved and perhaps eager to avoid such a mass execution, quickly brought Daniel before Nebuchadnezzar. He presented Daniel to the king, perhaps with a touch of pride, saying, "I have found a man among the exiles from Judah who can tell the king the meaning of his dream." The king, his eyes fixed on Daniel, asked, "Are you able to tell me what I saw in my dream and interpret it?" Daniel, standing before the most powerful ruler of his time, did not take credit for himself. His humility was as striking as his wisdom. No wise man, enchanter, magician or diviner can explain to the king the mystery he has asked about, Daniel began, his voice calm and steady. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in days to come. Your dream and the visions that passed through your mind as you were lying on your bed are these. And then Daniel began to describe the dream, painting the vivid images before the king's astonished eyes, recalling details that Nebuchadnezzar himself had forgotten. Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay. While you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken to pieces at the same time and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. As Daniel recounted the dream, the king's memory would have stirred, the forgotten images rushing back with startling clarity. He would have recognized every detail, every nuance of the disturbing vision that had plagued his sleep. A sense of awe, perhaps even fear, would have begun to settle upon him. And then Daniel proceeded to give the interpretation, unfolding the meaning of each part of the colossal statue, revealing the sweep of future history. "This was your dream," Daniel concluded, his voice resonating with authority, "and now we will interpret it to the king. Your Majesty, you are the King of Kings. The God of heaven has given you dominion and power and might and glory. In your hands he has placed all mankind and the beasts of the field and the birds in the sky. Wherever people live, he has made you ruler over all of them. You are that head of gold." The king, the mighty Nebuchadnezzar, the ruler of the greatest empire of his time, was the head of gold. This would have resonated deeply with his own perception of his power and his divine right to rule. Daniel continued, "After you, another kingdom will rise, inferior to yours, represented by the silver chest and arms. Next, a third kingdom, one of bronze, will rule over the whole earth, the belly and thighs. Finally, there will be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, the legs. For iron breaks and smashes everything, and as iron breaks things to pieces, so it will crush and break all the others. Just as you saw that the feet and toes were partly of baked clay and partly of iron, so this will be a divided kingdom, yet it will have some of the strength of iron in it, even as you saw iron mixed with clay. As the toes were partly iron and partly clay, so this kingdom will be partly strong and partly brittle. And just as you saw the iron mixed with baked clay, so the people will be a mixture and will not remain united, any more than iron mixes with clay." The vision was unfolding, painting a grand tapestry of future empires, a succession of powers that would rise and fall, each inferior to the last in its purity, yet each possessing its own unique strength. And then Daniel came to the final, most significant part of the dream. In the time of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, nor will it be left to another people. It will crush all those kingdoms and bring them to an end, but it will itself endure forever. This is the meaning of the vision of the rock cut out of a mountain, but not by human hands, a rock that broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future. The dream is true and its interpretation is trustworthy. Nebuchadnezzar, overwhelmed by the accuracy of Daniel's revelation and the profound truth of the interpretation, fell prostrate before Daniel. This was an extraordinary act for such a powerful monarch, bowing before an exile, a testament to the awe and reverence Daniel's words had inspired. The king ordered that Daniel be given an offering and incense, treating him as one favored by the gods. "Surely your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries," Nebuchadnezzar declared, his voice filled with newfound respect, "for you were able to reveal this mystery." From that day forward, Daniel's position in the court was secured. The king placed him in a high position and lavished many gifts upon him. He made Daniel ruler over the entire province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. At Daniel's request, the king also appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to oversee the affairs of the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the royal court, a trusted advisor and confidant to the king. The four friends, who had stood firm in their quiet faith, were now elevated to positions of immense power and influence within the very empire that had once held them captive. Years passed, and the memory of the dream and its interpretation, though profound, might have begun to fade slightly in the king's mind, or perhaps he simply wished to assert his own power and legacy in a more tangible, enduring way. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. It was a colossal statue, gleaming in the harsh Babylonian sun, a testament to his immense wealth and his desire for everlasting glory. He set it up on the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon, a vast, flat expanse where it would be visible for miles around, dominating the landscape. Then, the king sent out a summons, gathering all the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. It was to be a grand, elaborate ceremony, a public display of loyalty and reverence. Imagine the scene: thousands of officials, from every corner of the vast empire, converging upon the plain of Dura, their colorful robes and uniforms creating a vibrant spectacle against the dusty earth. The air would have been thick with anticipation, the murmur of countless voices rising and falling like the tide. When all the officials had assembled and were standing before the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, a herald, a man with a powerful voice, cried out for all to hear. His voice would have boomed across the plain, carried by the wind to every ear. "People of all languages and nations, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." The command was clear, absolute, and terrifying. The penalty for disobedience was immediate death by fire, a gruesome end designed to instill fear and ensure absolute conformity. The sound of the music was to be the signal, a crescendo of instruments that would compel every person present to prostrate themselves before the golden image. For many, this would have been a simple act of obedience, a gesture of loyalty to the powerful king. For others, particularly those from different lands with different gods, it would have been a moment of quiet internal conflict, a choice between life and conviction. As the music began to swell, a symphony of ancient sounds filling the air, the vast multitude of people, without hesitation, fell to their knees, their faces pressed to the dust of the plain, their bodies bowed in worship before the towering golden image. The sight would have been overwhelming, a sea of humanity prostrate in unison, a powerful display of the king's absolute authority. However, amidst this vast throng, there were a few who remained standing. These were the men who had been appointed to oversee the affairs of the province of Babylon: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their decision was not made lightly, nor was it an act of defiance for defiance's sake. It was a quiet, unwavering stand rooted in their deep and abiding faith in the one true God, the God of Israel. Their God had commanded them not to worship any other gods, not to bow down to idols fashioned by human hands. To them, this was not merely a political act, but a profound spiritual matter, a test of their allegiance. Their refusal to bow down did not go unnoticed. Some of the astrologers, perhaps those who felt overshadowed by Daniel and his friends, or perhaps those who were simply zealous in their loyalty to the king, came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They approached King Nebuchadnezzar, their voices filled with accusation. "May the king live forever," they began, their words dripping with false deference. "Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your Majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." A furious rage gripped King Nebuchadnezzar when he heard these accusations. His face, usually stern and commanding, would have contorted with anger. He immediately ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be brought before him. The three friends, their hearts perhaps beating a little faster, but their resolve still firm, were led into the king's presence. Nebuchadnezzar, his voice trembling with fury, addressed them directly. "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" The king was giving them a second chance, a final opportunity to recant, to save their lives. The threat was explicit, the consequence of refusal horrifyingly clear. The blazing furnace, perhaps visible in the distance, its flames licking at the sky, would have served as a stark reminder of their impending doom. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, with a quiet dignity, answered the king. Their response was not defiant or disrespectful, but firm and unwavering in its conviction. King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Their words, delivered with such calm certainty, ignited the king's fury to an even greater degree. His face, already red with anger, would have turned even darker. The very air around him seemed to crackle with his rage. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Imagine the roar of the flames, the intense heat radiating outwards, the air shimmering above the brick structure. The furnace, already a terrifying instrument of execution, was to be made even more deadly, its heat so extreme that it would consume anything thrown into it almost instantly. Then, Nebuchadnezzar commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. The soldiers, accustomed to carrying out the king's orders, would have bound the 3 friends, perhaps with heavy ropes or chains, their faces grim as they approached the inferno. The heat emanating from the furnace would have been unbearable, scorching the air, making it difficult to breathe. As the soldiers, with their powerful build, seized the 3 men, still dressed in their cloaks, tunics, turbans, and other clothes, they would have felt the intense heat pressing in on them. And so, the 3 men, bound and helpless, were hurled into the heart of the blazing furnace. The flames, now 7 times hotter, roared with an unimaginable intensity. And because the king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot, the flames leaped out and killed the soldiers who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to their deaths. The heat was so extreme that it consumed those who merely approached its maw, a terrifying testament to the king's wrath. But then, something extraordinary, something utterly miraculous, happened. King Nebuchadnezzar, who had been watching the horrific scene, was astonished. He rose in haste and asked his advisors, his voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and fear, "Wasn't it 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They answered the king, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loose, walking around in the fire, and they are not hurt. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Imagine the king's eyes, wide with shock, staring into the heart of the inferno. Instead of 3 charred bodies, he saw 4 figures, moving freely amidst the raging flames. The ropes that had bound Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were gone, consumed by the fire, yet the men themselves were unharmed. And the 4th figure, radiant and ethereal, possessed a divine quality that transcended anything earthly. The sight would have been utterly breathtaking, a profound challenge to all the king's understanding of power and reality. Nebuchadnezzar, completely overcome, approached the opening of the blazing furnace. His voice, once filled with rage, was now hushed, filled with reverence. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out. Come here," he commanded, his words echoing into the fiery depths. And the 3 men, obedient to the king's call, walked out of the fire. As they emerged, unharmed and unafraid, all the satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors crowded around them. They examined the 3 men closely, their faces etched with wonder and disbelief. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, not a hair on their heads was singed, their cloaks were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. It was as if they had walked through a gentle breeze, not a raging inferno. The flames, which had consumed the soldiers who approached them, had respected their very garments, leaving no trace of their fiery ordeal. Nebuchadnezzar, humbled and awestruck by this undeniable miracle, spoke again, his voice now filled with praise. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore I decree that anyone of any nation or language who says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego must be cut into pieces and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, for no other god can save in this way. The king, in his characteristic fashion, swung from furious rage to fervent praise, issuing a new decree that protected the God of Israel and honored his faithful servants. And so, the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon, elevating them to even greater positions of influence and authority. Their unwavering faith, tested in the most extreme circumstances, had not only saved their lives but had also brought glory to their God and secured their place of honor within the empire. The story of the blazing furnace, with its impossible rescue and its divine intervention, would have spread like wildfire throughout Babylon and beyond, a testament to the power of faith and the miraculous hand of the Most High God. Years continued to pass, and King Nebuchadnezzar, for all his power, was once again troubled by dreams. He had another dream that terrified him, a vision that left him deeply disturbed. He summoned all the wise men of Babylon, the magicians, enchanters, and astrologers, to interpret this new dream for him. He recounted the dream in detail, his voice perhaps laced with fear, describing the colossal tree that reached to the heavens, its leaves beautiful, its fruit abundant, providing food for all, and shelter for the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. He described how a holy messenger, an angel, came down from heaven and commanded that the tree be cut down, its branches lopped off, its leaves stripped, and its fruit scattered. Yet, the stump and its roots were to be left in the ground, bound with iron and bronze, in the grass of the field, to be drenched with the dew of heaven and to live with the animals of the earth. The messenger declared that the king's mind would be changed from that of a man to that of an animal, and 7 times would pass over him, until he acknowledged that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The wise men, as before, were unable to interpret the dream. Its meaning, though vivid, remained shrouded in mystery to them. Finally, Daniel, also called Belshazzar, came before the king. He was filled with the spirit of the holy gods, and the king recounted the dream to him, trusting in Daniel's unique ability to understand such profound visions. Daniel listened intently, his expression perhaps growing solemn as the king spoke. When Nebuchadnezzar finished, Daniel was greatly perplexed for a time, his thoughts troubled by the dream's ominous implications. The king, noticing Daniel's distress, urged him, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its meaning alarm you." Daniel, with a heavy heart, began to interpret the dream, knowing that its message was one of judgment for the mighty king. "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, with its top reaching to the sky, visible to the whole earth, with beautiful leaves and abundant fruit, providing food for all, and shelter for the wild animals and nests for the birds in its branches. Your Majesty, you are that tree. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to distant lands. He continued, his voice gentle but firm, and now this is the interpretation, Your Majesty, and this is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass over you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots in the ground means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, Your Majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue. Daniel's interpretation was a direct challenge to the king's pride, a stark warning of impending judgment if he did not humble himself before the Most High God. The king listened, perhaps with a mixture of fear and defiance, but the words, though unsettling, did not immediately change his heart. 12 months later, King Nebuchadnezzar was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. From this vantage point, he would have had a panoramic view of his magnificent city, the towering ziggurat of Etemenanke, reaching towards the heavens, its terraced levels painted in vibrant colors, the lush hanging gardens, a wonder of the ancient world, the bustling streets below, filled with the sounds of commerce and daily life, the majestic Euphrates flowing through the heart of it all. As he surveyed his vast domain, a wave of pride swelled within him. Is not this the great Babylon I have built as my royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? He mused aloud, his voice perhaps echoing softly in the wind. Even as the words left his lips, a voice came from heaven, clear and resonant, speaking directly to the king. King Nebuchadnezzar, this is what is decreed for you. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass over you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. Immediately, the prophecy was fulfilled. Nebuchadnezzar was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. He lived in the wild, his mind transformed, his regal bearing replaced by the instincts of an animal. For 7 long years, the mighty king, once the epitome of human power, lived in this desolate state, a living testament to the sovereignty of the Most High God. At the end of that time, Nebuchadnezzar's sanity was restored. He looked up to heaven, his mind clear once more, and he praised the Most High. He honored and glorified him who lives forever, whose dominion is an eternal dominion, and whose kingdom endures from generation to generation. He acknowledged that all the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing, and that God does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time that his sanity was restored, his honor and splendor were returned to him. His advisors and nobles sought him out, and he was restored to his throne and became even greater than before. And from that moment on, Nebuchadnezzar, the once proud king, declared, "Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride he is able to humble." The experience had profoundly transformed him, turning his heart from arrogance to humility, from self-worship to the worship of the true God. Many years later, after Nebuchadnezzar had passed from the scene, and his son Belshazzar was ruling as king in Babylon. Belshazzar, unlike his father, did not learn the lessons of humility and reverence for the Most High God. One night, King Belshazzar gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. The palace would have been ablaze with light, filled with the sounds of revelry, laughter, and music. The air would have been thick with the scent of roasted meats, sweet wines, and exotic perfumes. In his drunken revelry, Belshazzar gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that his predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar, had taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem. These were sacred vessels, consecrated for use in the worship of the Lord, objects of profound spiritual significance. To use them for a pagan feast, for drinking wine and praising false gods, was an act of extreme sacrilege, a deliberate insult to the God of Israel. So, the gold goblets that had been taken from the house of God in Jerusalem were brought in, and the king and his nobles, his wives and his concubines, drank wine from them. As they drank, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, the idols of Babylon, fashioned by human hands, lifeless and powerless. The sounds of their blasphemous praises would have filled the great hall, a cacophony of disrespect and spiritual arrogance. Suddenly, as they were feasting and reveling, the fingers of a human hand appeared and began to write on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace. The light from the lampstand would have cast an eerie glow on the moving fingers, illuminating the strange, mysterious script as it formed on the wall. The king watched, his eyes wide with terror, as the hand wrote. Imagine the sudden silence that would have fallen over the banquet hall, the laughter dying on people's lips, the music fading into an uneasy stillness. All eyes would have been fixed on the wall, on the supernatural writing that appeared as if from nowhere. King Belshazzar's face turned pale with fear, and his knees knocked together. His legs gave way, and he slumped onto his throne, utterly terrified. He cried out, his voice hoarse with panic, for the astrologers, Chaldeans, and diviners to be brought in. "Whoever can read this writing and tell me what it means," he declared, his voice trembling, "will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." All the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. Their faces, usually composed and confident, would have been etched with confusion and fear. The writing was in a language or script unknown to them, or perhaps its meaning was deliberately obscured. The king was even more terrified, and his face grew paler. His nobles were baffled, their revelry turned to dread. Then, the queen, hearing the commotion and the cries of the king, entered the banquet hall. Her presence, perhaps, brought a moment of calm amidst the rising panic. "May the king live forever," she began, her voice steady. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, I say, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. This man Daniel, whom the king called Belshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means. So Daniel was brought before the king. Belshazzar, desperate for answers, addressed him. Are you Daniel, one of the exiles my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. The wise men and enchanters were brought before me to read this writing and tell me what it means, but they could not. But I have heard that you can interpret dreams and solve difficult problems. If you can read this writing and tell me what it means, you will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around your neck, and you will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Daniel, now an old man, his face perhaps lined with wisdom and experience, stood calmly before the terrified king. He did not immediately accept the king's lavish offer. You may keep your gifts for yourself and give your rewards to someone else, Daniel replied, his voice clear and resonant. Nevertheless, I will read the writing for the king and tell him what it means. And then Daniel began to speak, not with flattery, but with a solemn and powerful rebuke, reminding Belshazzar of the lessons his father, Nebuchadnezzar, had learned through bitter experience. Your Majesty, the Most High God gave your father Nebuchadnezzar sovereignty and greatness and glory and splendor. Because of the high position he gave him, all the nations and peoples of every language dreaded and feared him. Those the king wanted to kill, he killed. Those he wanted to spare, he spared. Those he wanted to promote, he promoted. And those he wanted to humble, he humbled. But when his heart became arrogant and hardened with pride, he was deposed from his royal throne and stripped of his glory. He was driven away from people and given the mind of an animal. He lived with the wild donkeys and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until he acknowledged that the Most High God is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and sets over them anyone he wishes. Daniel's words would have hung heavy in the silent hall, a stark reminder of divine judgment. He then turned his attention directly to Belshazzar, his voice growing even more serious. But you, Belshazzar, his successor, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from his temple brought to you, and you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood and stone, which cannot see or hear or understand. But you did not honor the God who holds in his hand your life and all your ways. Therefore he sent the hand that wrote the inscription. And then Daniel revealed the meaning of the mysterious words on the wall, words that sealed the fate of Belshazzar and his kingdom. This is the inscription that was written: Mean, Tekel, Parsin. Here is what these words mean. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. The interpretation was devastating, a pronouncement of immediate doom. Belshazzar's reign was over, his kingdom judged and found lacking, to be conquered and divided by the rising powers of the Medes and Persians. Despite the terrifying message, King Belshazzar, true to his word, ordered that Daniel be clothed in purple, a gold chain placed around his neck, and that he be proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. It was a hollow honor, for the night was already far advanced, and the shadows of a new empire were gathering at the city gates. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, was slain. The city, once thought impregnable with its massive walls and its abundant provisions, fell to the invading forces of Darius the Mede. The sounds of battle, perhaps muffled at first, would have grown louder, closer, until the shouts of the conquering soldiers filled the streets. The mighty Babylonian Empire, which had dominated the ancient world for so long, came to an abrupt and dramatic end, just as the prophecy had foretold. Darius the Mede took over the kingdom at the age of 62. Under the new rule of Darius, Daniel continued to prosper. Darius, recognizing Daniel's exceptional abilities and his unwavering integrity, decided to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, and over them he appointed 3 administrators, one of whom was Daniel. These administrators were to be accountable to the king, ensuring that he suffered no loss. Daniel quickly distinguished himself among the administrators and satraps by his exceptional qualities. He was so outstanding that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. This, however, stirred up jealousy and resentment among the other administrators and satraps. They began to look for reasons to accuse Daniel in his conduct of government affairs. They watched him, scrutinizing his every move, hoping to find some fault, some flaw, that they could use against him. But they could find no corruption, no negligence, no error in his work. Daniel was trustworthy, and no fault or corruption could be found in him. His integrity was unassailable, his dedication to his duties absolute. Frustrated by their inability to find any legitimate grounds for accusation, these envious officials finally concluded, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man Daniel unless it has something to do with the law of his God." They knew that Daniel's faith was the one area where he would never compromise, where his loyalty to God would always supersede his loyalty to any earthly king. This became their strategy, a cunning and malicious plot designed to trap Daniel. So, the administrators and satraps went as a group to King Darius. They approached him with a show of great deference, their voices smooth and persuasive. "May King Darius live forever," they began, their words dripping with false loyalty. The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except to you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. The king, perhaps flattered by their apparent devotion and unaware of the sinister motive behind their proposal, agreed to their request. He signed the written decree, making it an unchangeable law of the Medes and Persians. The decree was proclaimed throughout the kingdom, a chilling command that would force every subject to choose between loyalty to the king and loyalty to their own gods. When Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he did not waver. He knew the implications, He understood the danger, but his faith remained steadfast. He went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had always done. His prayers were not a sudden act of defiance, but a continuation of his lifelong practice, a consistent expression of his devotion. The windows, open towards Jerusalem, would have been a poignant reminder of his homeland, of the temple that once stood there, and of the God he served. The conspirators, who had been watching Daniel's house, saw him praying and asking God for help. They had set their trap, and Daniel, in his unwavering faithfulness, had walked directly into it. They immediately went to the king and reminded him of the royal decree. "Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days anyone who prays to any god or human being except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den?" they asked, their voices feigning concern. The king confirmed, "The decree stands, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed." Then they said to the king, their voices filled with triumph, "Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day." When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He realized he had been tricked, that his trusted advisor, Daniel, was now in grave danger because of his own unwitting decree. He was determined to rescue Daniel and spent the rest of the day until sunset trying to find a way to save him. He might have paced his royal chambers, his brow furrowed in thought, desperately seeking a loophole, a legal means to circumvent the unchangeable law. But the law of the Medes and Persians was absolute, and his hands were tied. At sunset, the men who had accused Daniel again went as a group to the king and said to him, "Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed." Their voices were insistent, their eyes fixed on their prey. Darius, with a heavy heart, had no choice. He gave the order, and Daniel was brought and thrown into the lion's den. The den, a dark, cavernous pit, would have been filled with the low growls and the musky scent of hungry lions, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. It was a terrifying place, a certain death sentence. As Daniel was being led to the den, the king spoke to him, his voice filled with a desperate hope. "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A large stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, sealing it shut. The king then sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, ensuring that no one could interfere with the decree or attempt to rescue Daniel. That night, King Darius returned to his palace, his heart heavy with grief. He refused to eat, and no entertainment was brought before him. He could not sleep, his mind tormented by the thought of Daniel in the lion's den. The sounds of the night, usually a comfort, would have seemed oppressive, each rustle of leaves, each distant howl, perhaps echoing the fate he feared for Daniel. Very early the next morning, as soon as it was light enough to see, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. His steps would have been urgent, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and a faint, flickering hope. As he approached the den, he called out to Daniel in an anguished voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions?" The words hung in the cold morning air, a desperate plea into the silence of the pit. And then, a voice, calm and clear, answered from within the den. "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty." The king was overjoyed. His heart, which had been heavy with despair, now soared with relief and gratitude. He gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. The lions, fierce and hungry, had been rendered harmless, their jaws sealed by divine power. It was another undeniable miracle, a profound demonstration of God's protection over his faithful servant. At the king's command, the men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. Before they even reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. The justice was swift and terrible, a stark contrast to the miraculous preservation of Daniel. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and men of every language throughout the whole world, "May you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. His long life, marked by unwavering faith and extraordinary wisdom, continued to be a testament to the power of the Most High God, even amidst the changing tides of empires and the whims of powerful kings. His story, whispered through the ages, would continue to inspire generations, a quiet assurance that even in the darkest of times, when all seems lost, there is a divine hand that watches over those who trust in it, guiding them through fiery furnaces and lions' dens, leading them to peace and rest. A gentle breeze rustles the leaves of the ancient trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant blossoms. As the last sliver of twilight fades into the deep indigo of night, and the stars begin to emerge, one by one, like tiny lamps illuminating the vast, quiet expanse of the heavens, inviting a deep and peaceful slumber to settle upon all who listen, a soft blanket of calm. A soft blanket of calm. The quiet hush of the Babylonian night, with its myriad stars scattered across the velvet sky, often brought a sense of profound peace, yet for some, it also carried the weight of unspoken anxieties, particularly within the bustling, often restless heart of the city itself. Far from the tranquil fields, within the imposing ziggurats and the sprawling royal palaces, life continued its intricate dance, regulated by the decrees of kings and the watchful eyes of their many officials. It was into this complex tapestry that Daniel, along with his three companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, had been woven, their Hebrew names now softened and reshaped by Babylonian tongues into Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, a subtle but significant change reflecting their new roles and their new home. They were young men, still, though years had passed since their arrival as captives, years spent diligently studying the Chaldean language, the ancient cuneiform scripts, the histories, and the complex astrological observations that formed the bedrock of Babylonian wisdom, all while carefully preserving the traditions and the quiet faith of their ancestors. The king, Nebuchadnezzar, a figure of immense power and often volatile temperament, had recognized something exceptional in these young men, a sharp intellect and a discerning spirit that set them apart from the other youths brought from conquered lands. He had elevated them, placing them in positions of trust and authority within his vast administration, a decision that, while bringing them prestige and influence, also placed them in a precarious balance between their deeply held beliefs and the demands of a polytheistic empire. Their days were filled with the murmur of palace life, the rustle of official scrolls, the scent of expensive incense burning in the great halls, and the distant, rhythmic clang of hammers from the city's many workshops, building and rebuilding the magnificent structures that defined Babylon. One particular morning, the air thick with the scent of baking bread from the palace kitchens and the faint, sweet perfume of blossoming date palms from the royal gardens, a new decree rippled through the city, carried by runners and heralds whose voices echoed through the narrow, sun-dappled streets. King Nebuchadnezzar, in a grand display of his own power and the might of his empire, had commanded the construction of an immense golden image, a towering statue, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, a colossal figure that would gleam under the fierce Babylonian sun, dominating the plain of Dura, a vast, flat expanse just outside the city walls. The sheer scale of it would have been breathtaking, a testament to human ambition and the king's desire for an enduring legacy, a monument that would speak of his glory for generations to come. The decree was not merely about its construction, it was about its veneration. At a specified time, when the full orchestra, the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, dulcimer, and all kinds of music would sound its majestic call, every person, from the highest satrap to the lowliest laborer, was to fall down and worship this golden image. The command was absolute, leaving no room for dissent or individual conscience, for the penalty for disobedience was swift and terrifying. Anyone who refused to bow would be immediately cast into a blazing furnace, a fiery kill, its flames roaring with an intensity that could melt metal and turn flesh to ash in mere moments. The very thought of it sent shivers through the populace, a cold dread that settled deep in the bones, even amidst the warmth of the morning sun. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, by virtue of their high positions, would have been among the most prominent figures expected to participate in this grand, mandatory act of worship. They would have heard the heralds' booming voices, perhaps from the cool, tiled courtyards of their official residences, all while reviewing scrolls in the palace scriptorium. The news would have spread like wildfire, a mixture of awe at the king's ambition and fear of his wrath. For these three men, however, the decree presented an agonizing dilemma, a stark choice between their earthly lives and their unwavering devotion to the one true God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whose commandments explicitly forbade the worship of idols. Their faith was not a casual adherence but a deep, abiding conviction nurtured through generations, a quiet strength that had sustained them even in exile. As the appointed day drew near, the plain of Dura would have transformed into a bustling spectacle. Thousands upon thousands of people would have gathered, a sea of faces under the vast, open sky, their eyes drawn to the colossal golden figure that shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting its brilliant rays across the landscape. The air would have been thick with the murmur of the crowd, the shuffling of feet, the scent of dust and sweat, and the nervous anticipation of the impending ceremony. The royal guards, their polished bronze armor glinting, would have stood at attention, their spears held rigid, ensuring order and compliance. Then the moment arrived. The air grew still, and a profound silence descended upon the multitude, broken only by the gentle whisper of the desert wind. From the royal platform, a signal was given, and the full orchestra erupted in a magnificent crescendo of sound, a powerful, overwhelming wave of music that washed over the plain. The deep thrum of the sackbuts, the piercing call of the cornets, the lilting notes of the flutes, all mingled together in a symphony designed to compel and to inspire awe. And as the final, resonant chord hung in the air, the command was given, "Fall down and worship the golden image." Like a single, massive wave, the entire assembly prostrated themselves, their foreheads touching the dusty earth, a vast, undulating carpet of humanity bowing before the king's decree and the shimmering idol. The sound of thousands of bodies falling to the ground would have been like a soft, collective sigh, a rustle of garments, a symphony of submission. Yet, amidst this sea of bowed heads, three figures remained standing, their backs straight, their gazes fixed, perhaps, on the distant horizon or the vast, indifferent sky. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stood firm, their hearts beating with a quiet resolve, their refusal a silent, yet profoundly defiant, act of faith. Their defiance did not go unnoticed. There were always those among the Chaldeans, particularly the astrologers and sorcerers who had been overshadowed by Daniel's wisdom and the success of his companions, who harbored resentment and jealousy. These men, with their sharp eyes and even sharper tongues, quickly observed the three Hebrews standing tall amidst the prostrate crowd. They saw an opportunity to undermine their rivals, to expose what they considered a blatant act of disrespect to the king and his gods. With a mixture of indignation and thinly veiled satisfaction, they approached Nebuchadnezzar, their voices laced with accusation. "O king, live forever," they began, their words dripping with feigned loyalty. "There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication, a direct challenge to the king's authority and his divine right. Nebuchadnezzar's reaction was immediate and explosive. His face, usually composed, flushed with a terrible rage. The sheer audacity of their disobedience, especially from men he had personally elevated, was an insult he could not tolerate. He was a king accustomed to absolute obedience, and this public defiance was an affront to his very being, a challenge to the power he wielded over life and death. In a fury, he commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him at once. The three men were led through the hushed crowds, their footsteps echoing softly on the dusty ground, towards the royal platform where the king sat, his eyes burning with anger. The air around him crackled with his wrath, a palpable force that made even the bravest guards uneasy. "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," the king thundered, his voice reverberating across the plain, "that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image which I have set up?" His words were not a question seeking information, but a demand for an explanation, a final chance to recant. He offered them a reprieve, a second chance, perhaps hoping that the sheer terror of their impending doom would break their resolve. "Now if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you are to fall down and worship the image which I have made. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands?" His voice held a chilling certainty, a conviction in his own unassailable power, a power that he believed surpassed even the gods of other nations. The roaring furnace, visible in the distance, its flames licking at the sky, served as a grim, fiery reminder of his words. The three men stood before him, their faces calm, their eyes unwavering. The vast crowd watched in breathless silence, the only sounds the distant crackle of the furnace and the gentle sigh of the wind. This was a moment of profound tension, a clash of wills between absolute power and absolute faith. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in a voice that was clear and steady, replied to the king, their words carrying a quiet dignity that belied their perilous situation. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to answer you on this point," they began, their tone respectful yet firm. "If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Their response was audacious, a declaration that echoed with centuries of their people's history, a testament to a God who was not bound by human decrees or the might of empires. They were not defiant out of disrespect, but out of an unshakable conviction that their allegiance belonged to a higher power. That even if he does not, part of their answer was particularly striking, revealing a faith that did not demand a miracle but was prepared to accept any outcome, trusting in God's sovereignty regardless of their personal fate. Nebuchadnezzar's rage, which had been simmering, now boiled over. His expression changed, becoming distorted with fury. He commanded that the furnace, already intensely hot, be heated 7 times hotter than it was normally. The stokers, their faces grim, began to shovel more fuel, perhaps dried reeds, bundles of brushwood, and logs, into the gaping maw of the kiln, the flames roaring higher and higher, turning the air around it shimmering and distorted with heat. The very ground would have vibrated with the intensity of the inferno, the air thick with the smell of burning wood and the metallic tang of extreme heat. Then he ordered some of the mightiest men in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the blazing furnace. The soldiers, burly and strong, would have approached the 3 men, their faces grim, their movements swift. They bound them securely, perhaps with thick ropes, tying their hands and feet, rendering them helpless. The 3 men offered no resistance, their composure unwavering even as they were led towards the terrifying maw of the furnace. As they were brought to the edge of the inferno, the heat would have been unimaginable, a searing blast that pushed against their skin, making it difficult to breathe. The air shimmered, and the roar of the flames was deafening, a hungry, consuming sound. The soldiers, compelled by the king's command, approached the furnace, their faces contorted against the intense heat, their uniforms beginning to smolder. The king's command to make it 7 times hotter had been so thoroughly executed that the flames, leaping out from the opening, were so fierce that they consumed the very men who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, instantly killing them as they drew too close to the fiery abyss. Their bodies would have collapsed, charred and lifeless, at the furnace's edge, a chilling testament to the furnace's lethal power. And so, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, still bound, fell into the very heart of the blazing furnace. The sound of their bodies dropping into the inferno would have been swallowed by the roaring flames, a sound that should have marked their immediate end. A hush fell over the onlookers, a collective gasp of horror and morbid fascination. The king, watching from his vantage point, would have expected to see them instantly consumed, their defiance extinguished in a flash of fire and smoke. But then, something extraordinary happened. As Nebuchadnezzar peered into the furnace, his eyes, still burning with anger, widened in disbelief. He sprang to his feet, his voice a mixture of astonishment and fear. "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" he cried out to his counselors, his voice trembling. "Certainly, O king," they replied, equally bewildered. "Look," the king exclaimed, his hand pointing towards the furnace. "I see 4 men loose, walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." The sight was utterly astounding. Instead of 3 charred bodies, there were 4 figures moving freely within the heart of the inferno. The ropes that had bound Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego lay in ashes around their feet, but the men themselves were unharmed, their garments untouched by the flames. And beside them, walking with a serene presence, was a 4th figure, whose form radiated an ethereal light, a being of such majesty and calm that Nebuchadnezzar, a king who considered himself divine, could only describe as a son of the gods. The intense heat, which had been lethal to the soldiers, now seemed to embrace these 4, transforming from a destructive force into a gentle, protective warmth. The air within the furnace, instead of being a suffocating inferno, felt to them perhaps like a cool breeze on a summer's day, a place of quiet communion. Overwhelmed by this miraculous sight, Nebuchadnezzar approached the mouth of the blazing furnace, his voice now softened, filled with awe and a dawning understanding. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come out and come here," he called out, his command now an invitation, a plea. And from the heart of the roaring flames, the 3 men emerged, stepping out of the furnace and onto the dusty plain. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors all gathered around them, their faces a mixture of wonder and disbelief. They examined the 3 men closely, touching their garments, smelling their hair. And what they found was truly astonishing. The fire had not touched their bodies, not a hair on their heads was singed, their cloaks were completely unharmed, and there was not even the faintest smell of smoke upon them. It was as if they had walked through a gentle mist, rather than a consuming inferno. The only thing the fire had destroyed were the bonds that held them, freeing them in the very act of their supposed destruction. Nebuchadnezzar, humbled and profoundly moved by what he had witnessed, spoke again, his voice now filled with reverence. "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielding up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God." His words were a powerful declaration, a public acknowledgement of the supremacy of the God of the Hebrews, a stark contrast to his earlier boast of his own unassailable power. He then issued a new decree, one that reversed his previous command: any people, nation, or language that spoke anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to rubble. For, he declared, there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. And so, the three men, who had faced death with unwavering courage, were not only spared but were further promoted by the king, their position solidified and their influence expanded within the province of Babylon. The story of the fiery furnace, of their miraculous deliverance, spread throughout the vast empire, carried by merchants and travelers, by soldiers and scribes, a testament to a God who protected his faithful even in the most dire circumstances. It was a story that would echo through the generations, a quiet assurance of divine presence in times of trial. Years passed, each one bringing new seasons, new harvests, new decrees from the ever-changing throne of Babylon. The city continued to thrive, its walls massive and imposing, its gardens lush and vibrant, its temples echoing with the chants of its priests. Daniel, too, continued to serve, his wisdom and discernment sought after by successive kings. The memory of the fiery furnace remained a powerful testament, a quiet reminder of the limits of human power and the boundless nature of divine protection. But the wheel of empire turns, and kings rise and fall, each bringing their own perspectives and their own challenges. After Nebuchadnezzar, other rulers ascended to the throne, each with their own ambitions and their own vulnerabilities. Eventually, the empire itself began to show signs of wear, its vastness becoming a burden, its internal divisions growing more pronounced. The Medes and the Persians, two powerful kingdoms from the east, were steadily rising, their armies formidable, their ambitions grand. One night, a new king, Belshazzar, held a magnificent feast in his palace, a lavish banquet for 1,000 of his lords, his wives, and his concubines. The air would have been thick with the scent of roasted meats, exotic spices, and sweet wines. The sound of revelry, of laughter and music would have filled the vast halls, echoing off the polished stone and the gilded ceilings. It was a night of unbridled celebration, a defiant display of wealth and power, even as the armies of the Medes and Persians, under the command of Cyrus, were reportedly encamped outside the city walls, their siege a constant, unspoken threat. In a moment of drunken arrogance and deliberate provocation, Belshazzar commanded that the gold and silver vessels, which his predecessor Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, be brought forth. These were sacred vessels, consecrated for holy use, imbued with the history and the faith of a people. To use them for a pagan feast, to drink wine from them in praise of idols of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone was an act of profound sacrilege, a deliberate insult to the God of Israel. As the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from these sacred vessels, their laughter and their revelry suddenly died in their throats. For, in that very instant, as if conjured from the very air, the fingers of a human hand appeared, writing upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace, opposite the lampstand. The light from the oil lamps would have cast long, dancing shadows, making the sight even more eerie, more unsettling. The writing was clear, etched into the wall for all to see, yet utterly incomprehensible. Belshazzar's face, moments before flushed with wine and merriment, turned pale with terror. His knees began to knock together, a soft, rhythmic sound in the sudden, profound silence. His thoughts were troubled, his mind racing, trying to grasp the meaning of this terrifying apparition. The festive atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a chilling dread that settled upon every heart in the hall. The laughter died, the music ceased, and only the soft crackle of the oil lamps and the king's trembling breaths could be heard. In his panic, the king cried out for his astrologers, his Chaldeans, and his diviners, promising rich rewards, a robe of purple, a chain of gold, and the position of third ruler in the kingdom, to anyone who could read the writing and interpret its meaning. The wise men of Babylon, renowned for their knowledge of ancient scripts and arcane prophecies, came forward, their faces a mixture of apprehension and ambition. They stared at the mysterious inscription, their brows furrowed in concentration, their lips moving silently as they tried to decipher the strange words. But despite all their learning, all their wisdom, they could not read the writing, nor could they make known its interpretation to the king. The words remained an impenetrable enigma, a silent, terrifying judgment. The king grew even more distressed, his terror deepening with each passing moment of incomprehension. His face became even paler, his thoughts more agitated. The lords, too, were greatly perplexed, their fear mirroring that of their king. It was then that the Queen Mother, a figure of wisdom and experience, entered the banquet hall. She had heard the commotion, the sudden silence, and the king's distressed cries. Her presence brought a momentary calm, a sense of grounded authority. "O king, live forever," she began, her voice steady and reassuring. "Do not let your thoughts alarm you or your face be pale. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods, and in the days of your father Nebuchadnezzar, illumination, understanding, and wisdom like the wisdom of the gods were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, appointed him chief of the magicians, astrologers, Chaldeans, and diviners. This was because an extraordinary spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, to explain riddles, and to solve difficult problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belshazzar. Let Daniel now be summoned, and he will declare the interpretation." Her words were a beacon of hope in the suffocating darkness of their fear. Daniel, though perhaps older now, his hair streaked with silver, his face etched with the wisdom of years, was still remembered for his extraordinary abilities, his unique connection to a higher power. The king, desperate for answers, immediately commanded that Daniel be brought before him. Daniel entered the lavish hall, his presence calm and composed, a stark contrast to the agitated fear that gripped the king and his courtiers. The scent of stale wine and fear hung in the air, mingling with the lingering aroma of the feast. Belshazzar, his voice still trembling, addressed Daniel, reiterating the promise of rewards. "Are you that Daniel who is one of the exiles from Judah, whom my father the king brought from Judah? I have heard about you, that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that illumination, understanding, and extraordinary wisdom are found in you. Now if you are able to read the writing and make its interpretation known to me, you will be clothed with purple, and wear a chain of gold around your neck, and have authority as the third ruler in the kingdom." Daniel listened patiently, his gaze steady. He was not swayed by the promise of earthly riches or power. He had seen empires rise and fall, kings come and go, and his loyalty remained fixed on his God. With a quiet dignity, he replied, "Let your gifts be for yourself, and give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make the interpretation known to him." His words were a gentle rebuke, a subtle reminder that his power came from a source far greater than any earthly monarch. He then began to speak, not just about the writing, but about the history that had led to this very moment, a history that Belshazzar, in his arrogance, had chosen to ignore. He reminded the king of Nebuchadnezzar's greatness, how the Most High God had bestowed upon him sovereignty, majesty, glory, and honor. He spoke of Nebuchadnezzar's pride, how his heart had been lifted up, and his spirit had become so hardened in arrogance that he was deposed from his royal throne and his glory was taken away from him. He recounted how Nebuchadnezzar had been driven away from mankind, his mind made like that of beasts, dwelling with the wild donkeys, feeding on grass like oxen, his body drenched with the dew of heaven, until he recognized that the Most High God is ruler over the realm of mankind and that he sets over it whomever he wishes. The story, a familiar one in the palace, would have resonated with a chilling weight in the now silent hall, the implication clear. "Yet you, his son, Belshazzar," Daniel continued, his voice calm but firm, "have not humbled your heart, even though you knew all this. But you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine from them, and you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see, hear, or know, and the God in whose hand are your life breath and all your ways, you have not glorified." The silence in the hall was absolute, broken only by the soft rustle of garments as some of the lords shifted uneasily. The weight of Daniel's words, the undeniable truth of his accusations, settled heavily upon them. Belshazzar, his face still pale, listened intently, his fear now mixed with a growing sense of impending doom. Therefore, Daniel declared, his gaze fixed on the mysterious inscription, "From him the hand was sent, and this inscription was written down." And this is the inscription that was written, Tekel, Upharsin. He paused, allowing the words to hang in the air, their foreign sounds now imbued with a terrifying significance. Then, with a slow, deliberate cadence, he revealed their meaning, unraveling the enigma that had paralyzed the king and his court. This is the interpretation of the message. Means unnumbered. God has numbered your kingdom and put an end to it. Tekel means swayed. You have been weighed in the balances and found deficient. Perez, the singular form of Upharsin, means divided. Your kingdom has been divided and given over to the Medes and Persians. Each word was a hammer blow, shattering Belshazzar's arrogance, his defiance, his very sense of security. The meaning was stark, unambiguous, and utterly devastating. His kingdom, his life, his reign, all were numbered, weighed, and found wanting, destined to be divided and conquered by the very forces that even now lay at his city gates. The prophecy was not of a distant future, but of an imminent, inescapable reality. Despite the terrifying nature of the message, Belshazzar, true to his word, commanded that Daniel be clothed with purple, and a chain of gold be placed around his neck, and that he be proclaimed the third ruler in the kingdom. It was a hollow honor, a fleeting recognition of power in a kingdom already condemned. That very night, the prophecy was fulfilled with chilling precision. While the feast had been in full swing, while the king and his lords had been drinking from sacred vessels and praising their idols, the armies of Cyrus, the Persian general, had found a way to divert the Euphrates River, which flowed directly through the heart of Babylon and under its massive walls. They had marched through the dried riverbed, entering the city undetected, their footsteps muffled by the night, their presence a silent, creeping tide of conquest. The massive bronze gates, which protected the river entrances, had, in a fatal oversight, been left open. The sounds of battle, of clashing steel and desperate cries, would have erupted suddenly, shattering the fragile peace of the palace. The revelry would have turned to chaos, the laughter to screams of terror. Belshazzar, the king who had so brazenly defied the God of heaven, was slain that very night. His reign, his kingdom, his life, all were brought to an abrupt and violent end. And Darius the Mede, a general in Cyrus's army, received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. The vast Babylonian empire, which had seemed so invincible, so eternal, had fallen in a single night, swept away by the relentless tide of history, just as Daniel had foretold. The air of Babylon, which had been filled with the scent of celebration and then fear, now carried the metallic tang of blood and the acrid smell of smoke from distant fires, a quiet testament to the swift and brutal change of power. The stars, which had watched over the city for millennia, continued their slow, silent march across the heavens, indifferent to the rise and fall of empires, their light a constant, unwavering presence in the vast, quiet expanse of the night, a quiet presence that seemed to whisper of enduring truths, of powers far beyond the grasp of earthly kings, inviting a deep and peaceful slumber to settle upon all who listen, a soft blanket of calm. A soft blanket of calm. The soft blanket of calm that settled over the ancient city of Babylon, as the stars wheeled slowly across the vast, dark sky, often brought with it a profound silence, broken only by the distant bleating of a stray sheep or the gentle rustle of date palm fronds in a passing breeze, a silence that allowed for contemplation and for the quiet unfolding of destinies. Within the towering walls of this magnificent city, a city built with bricks of clay and bitumen, adorned with glazed tiles depicting mythical beasts and intricate geometric patterns, lived for young men, far from their homeland, their lives irrevocably altered by the tides of empire. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, names that once echoed with the glory of their God, were now known by their Chaldean counterparts, Belshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, names given to them by the chief eunuch, Ashpenaz, names that honored the gods of Babylon, a subtle yet pervasive act of assimilation, a quiet attempt to weave them into the fabric of a new, foreign identity. These young men, chosen for their intelligence, their lack of physical blemish, and their noble lineage, were destined for a 3-year training program, an intensive immersion into the language and literature of the Chaldeans, a rigorous education designed to transform them into trusted advisors and administrators for King Nebuchadnezzar. Imagine the vast royal library, its clay tablets meticulously arranged on wooden shelves, each tablet inscribed with cuneiform script, chronicling the history of kings, the wisdom of astronomers, the incantations of priests, and the intricate laws governing the empire. The air within these chambers would have been dry and cool, carrying the faint, earthy scent of ancient clay and perhaps the lingering aroma of cedarwood from the furniture, a place where knowledge was both power and a pathway to understanding the world through Babylonian eyes. For young men accustomed to the scrolls of Moses and the Psalms of David, this new curriculum would have been a dizzying kaleidoscope of unfamiliar gods, complex astrological charts, and a worldview deeply rooted in the Fertile Crescent's polytheistic traditions. The king's generosity extended to their daily sustenance, providing them with rich food from his own table and wine from his personal cellar, a gesture of royal favor that was also a test of loyalty and a subtle means of integration. This royal fare, however, presented a quiet dilemma for Daniel and his companions, for it was likely prepared according to Babylonian customs, possibly including meat sacrificed to idols or foods deemed unclean by the dietary laws of their ancestral faith, the kashrut that had guided their lives since childhood in Judah. To partake of such food would be to compromise, to symbolically embrace the very gods they had been taught to reject, to allow the subtle threads of Babylonian culture to weave themselves into the deepest patterns of their spiritual lives. With a quiet resolve that belied his youth, Daniel approached Ashpenaz, the chief eunuch, a man whose position demanded both authority and a keen understanding of the delicate balance of power within the palace. Daniel, perhaps with a slight bow of deference, requested permission to abstain from the king's rich provisions, not out of defiance, but out of a deep-seated commitment to his heritage, a quiet plea for integrity in a world that sought to reshape him. Ashpenaz, a seasoned courtier, understood the potential implications of such a request, the risk of offending the king, whose word was law, whose generosity was expected to be received with gratitude and unquestioning acceptance. He expressed his concern, his voice perhaps a low murmur, about the possibility of Daniel and his friends appearing less healthy, less robust than the other youths, a physical manifestation that could displease the king and potentially jeopardize Ashpenaz's own standing, perhaps even his life. The weight of such responsibility would have pressed heavily upon the chief eunuch, whose very existence depended on his ability to anticipate and fulfill the king's wishes without fault. Daniel, however, possessed a quiet wisdom that extended beyond his years. He proposed a simple test, a trial period of 10 days. "Please test your servants for 10 days, he might have suggested, his voice calm and steady. "Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink." This humble request, a diet of pulses and water, was a stark contrast to the luxurious banquets of the palace, a testament to their unwavering commitment. The steward, a man whose daily task it was to oversee the provisions for these young trainees, was persuaded, perhaps by Daniel's earnestness, perhaps by the sheer simplicity of the request, which seemed to pose little risk. For 10 days, the 4 young men ate only vegetables and drank only water, while the other youths continued to feast on the king's rich delicacies. When the 10 days had passed, a quiet assessment was made. The steward, observing the young men with a discerning eye, found that Daniel and his companions appeared healthier, more robust, and better nourished than any of the other youths who had partaken of the royal food. Their faces, perhaps, held a clearer glow, their eyes a brighter spark, their movements a more vibrant energy, a quiet testament to their disciplined choice. This unexpected outcome, a subtle miracle in the heart of a pagan empire, allowed the steward to continue providing them with their simple diet, a small victory for faith and integrity in a world that often demanded conformity. Through this quiet act of devotion, God granted these 4 young men not only physical well-being but also an extraordinary measure of knowledge and understanding in all literature and wisdom, and to Daniel, a special gift of understanding visions and dreams, a profound spiritual endowment that would shape the course of his life and the destiny of nations. As the 3 years of rigorous training drew to a close, the time came for these young scholars to be presented before King Nebuchadnezzar. Imagine the grandeur of the throne room, a vast hall adorned with glittering gold and precious stones, the air thick with the scent of expensive incense and the hushed murmurs of courtiers. The king, seated upon his elaborate throne, would have exuded an aura of immense power and authority, his gaze sweeping over the assembled youths, searching for intelligence, loyalty, and competence. When he conversed with Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, he found them to be 10 times more discerning and skilled than all the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom, their wisdom shining with a quiet brilliance that surpassed even the most learned Chaldean sages. And so, these 4 young men, who had quietly held fast to their faith amidst the splendor and temptations of Babylon, entered the king's service, becoming trusted advisors in the inner circle of the most powerful empire of their time, their lives a quiet testament to the enduring strength of conviction. Years passed, marked by the slow turning of seasons and the steady rhythm of life within the sprawling city of Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar, a monarch of immense power and ambition, was often troubled by vivid dreams that disturbed his sleep, leaving him restless and perplexed. One night, a particularly unsettling dream weighed heavily upon his mind, filling him with a sense of unease that permeated his waking hours. He summoned all the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers of Babylon, a vast assembly of learned men, their robes perhaps rustling softly as they gathered in the royal court, their faces etched with the gravity of their profession. The king, his voice perhaps a low rumble, demanded that they not only interpret his dream but also reveal the dream itself, for it had completely vanished from his memory, leaving only a lingering sense of dread. The Chaldeans, accustomed to interpreting dreams when the details were provided, were taken aback by this unprecedented demand. They respectfully explained to the king that no man on earth could reveal both the dream and its interpretation, stating that only the gods, who did not dwell among mortals, possessed such knowledge. This response, while logical from their perspective, only served to fuel the king's frustration and anger. His voice, once a rumble, now rose in a furious decree, a command that echoed through the palace chambers. If they could not reveal his dream and its meaning, they would all be torn limb from limb, their houses reduced to rubble, a terrifying display of absolute power. But if they could, they would be richly rewarded and honored. The weight of this decree, a chilling pronouncement of life or death, settled heavily upon the assembled wise men, their faces paling in the flickering torchlight. When they again confessed their inability to fulfill his demand, the king's fury reached its peak, and he issued a decree to put to death all the wise men of Babylon, a sweeping and indiscriminate act of vengeance. Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, a man whose duty it was to carry out such grim commands, set about to execute the decree. As he moved through the city, gathering the wise men, he encountered Daniel and his companions, who were also counted among the wise men of Babylon. When Arioch, perhaps with a heavy heart, informed Daniel of the king's decree and the reason behind it, Daniel, with his characteristic calm and prudence, spoke to the captain, his voice even and measured. He asked Arioch, "Why is the king's decree so urgent?" a question that bought him precious time, a moment to understand the full scope of the crisis. Arioch, perhaps sensing a quiet wisdom in Daniel, explained the king's forgotten dream and his demand for both its revelation and interpretation. Daniel, understanding the gravity of the situation, knowing that his own life and the lives of his friends, and indeed all the wise men of Babylon, hung in the balance, approached the king. He requested a brief reprieve, a little more time, promising that he would reveal the interpretation to the king. Imagine Daniel, a young man, standing before the mighty Nebuchadnezzar, his voice steady, his demeanor respectful yet firm, asking for a delay in a death sentence decreed by the most powerful man on earth. There must have been a quiet conviction in his eyes, a subtle aura of divine assurance that persuaded the king to grant his request. Returning to his dwelling, a modest chamber within the sprawling palace complex, Daniel immediately informed his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, of the king's decree and the perilous situation they faced. Together, they turned to their God, the God of heaven, seeking mercy and understanding concerning this mystery, praying earnestly that they might be able to reveal the dream and its interpretation, and thus avert the impending destruction. Imagine them kneeling, perhaps on simple woven mats, in the quiet solitude of their room, their voices hushed, their hearts united in fervent prayer, their trust placed not in their own wisdom, but in the divine wisdom of the Almighty. That very night, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision, a vivid and profound experience that pierced the veil of human understanding. The details of the king's dream, long forgotten by Nebuchadnezzar himself, unfolded before Daniel's spiritual sight, along with its profound and far-reaching interpretation. Filled with gratitude and awe, Daniel blessed the God of heaven, his heart overflowing with praise for his wisdom and power, for his ability to change times and seasons, to depose kings and establish them, to give wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning, to reveal deep and hidden things, knowing what is in the darkness, with light dwelling in him. With the dream and its interpretation now clear in his mind, Daniel sought out Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, the man who had been tasked with the grim duty of executing the wise men. His voice, calm and reassuring, instructed Arioch, "Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him." Arioch, undoubtedly relieved by this unexpected turn of events, quickly brought Daniel before Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps with a sense of urgency, eager to deliver the good news and avert the widespread slaughter. Standing before the mighty king once more, Daniel, with humble reverence, clarified that it was not by his own wisdom, superior to that of any other living man, that he was able to reveal this mystery. Instead, he declared, it was the God of heaven who had revealed to the king what would happen in the latter days, a powerful testament to the sovereignty of his God, a quiet declaration of divine intervention in the heart of a pagan court. He then began to recount the king's dream, his voice steady, painting a vivid picture of the forgotten vision. "You, O king, were watching," Daniel began, his words slowly reconstructing the king's own subconscious memory, "and behold, there was a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth." As Daniel recounted these details, the king's memory would have slowly awakened, the hazy remnants of his dream coalescing into a clear and vivid picture, a profound sense of recognition washing over him. The image, the metals, the stone cut without hands, it all resonated with the deep, unsettling feeling that had plagued him. And then, Daniel proceeded to unveil the interpretation, his words carrying the weight of prophetic truth, revealing the grand sweep of future empires and the ultimate triumph of a divine kingdom. "You, O king, are a king of kings," Daniel explained, his voice perhaps softening slightly as he addressed the monarch directly, acknowledging his immense power, "for the God of heaven has given you a kingdom, power, strength, and glory, and wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the field and the birds of the heaven, he has given them into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold." The king, the mighty Nebuchadnezzar, ruler of the vast Babylonian Empire, was the head of gold, a symbol of his unparalleled power and wealth, the undisputed master of his age. "But after you," Daniel continued, his gaze perhaps fixed on some distant point, envisioning the slow march of history, "shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything, and like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others. Whereas you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, yet the strength of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw the iron mixed with ceramic clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly fragile. As you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay." Daniel's words painted a grand historical panorama, a succession of empires that would rise and fall after Babylon, each represented by a different metal, each with its own characteristics of strength and fragility. The kingdom of silver, inferior to Babylon, would be the Medo-Persian Empire, a vast dominion that would eventually conquer Babylon itself. The kingdom of bronze, ruling over all the earth, would be the Greek Empire under Alexander the Great, sweeping across continents with astonishing speed. And finally, the kingdom of iron, strong and crushing, would be the Roman Empire, known for its military might and its vast territorial control. The feet and toes, a mixture of iron and clay, spoke of a later, divided state of this empire, marked by both strength and inherent weakness, a lack of cohesion that would ultimately lead to its fragmentation. Then Daniel concluded with the most profound part of the interpretation, the part that pointed beyond earthly kingdoms to an eternal dominion. "And in the days of these kings," he proclaimed, his voice resonating with prophetic certainty, "the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Inasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will come to pass after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is sure." A profound silence must have settled over the throne room as Daniel finished speaking, the weight of his words hanging in the air. King Nebuchadnezzar, having heard his forgotten dream recounted with perfect accuracy and its meaning unveiled with such clarity and depth, was overwhelmed. He fell prostrate before Daniel, a king bowing before a captive, a powerful gesture of humility and recognition of divine authority. He ordered that an offering and incense be presented to Daniel, treating him as if he were a god or a divine messenger. His voice, perhaps filled with awe and wonder, declared, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of mysteries, since you could reveal this mystery." The king then elevated Daniel to a position of immense power and honor, making him a great man, showering him with many great gifts, and making him ruler over the entire province of Babylon, and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. At Daniel's humble request, the king also appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to oversee the affairs of the province of Babylon, while Daniel himself remained at the king's court, a trusted advisor and a powerful voice for wisdom and integrity in the heart of the empire. This quiet elevation, from captive youth to powerful governor, was a testament to the enduring power of faith and the quiet hand of divine providence, weaving itself through the tapestry of human history. Years passed, and the memory of the dream and its interpretation, while profound, sometimes faded into the background of the king's daily concerns, replaced by the immediate demands of governance and the allure of his own immense power. Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps reflecting on the golden head of the statue, a symbol of his own glorious reign, decided to construct a magnificent golden image, a colossal statue, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, a towering monument to his own authority and perhaps to the enduring power of his kingdom, a physical manifestation of his desire for lasting legacy. Imagine the immense effort involved in its construction, thousands of laborious, skilled artisans and engineers, toiling under the scorching Babylonian sun, shaping the precious metal, raising the immense structure on the plain of Dura, a vast, flat expanse of land outside the city walls. The statue would have gleamed under the sun, a beacon of imperial power, visible for miles across the flat landscape, its golden surface reflecting the intense sunlight, perhaps shimmering with an almost ethereal glow. Once the colossal image was completed, Nebuchadnezzar issued a decree, summoning all the satraps, administrators, governors, counselors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image he had set up. This was to be a grand public spectacle, a mandatory act of homage, a powerful demonstration of loyalty to the king and his empire. Imagine the vast assembly on the plain of Dura, a sea of people from all corners of the empire, their colorful garments and diverse languages creating a vibrant, bustling scene. The air would have been thick with anticipation, the murmur of thousands of voices, the rhythmic beat of distant drums, and perhaps the faint, sweet scent of incense carried on the breeze. A herald, his voice amplified by the quiet expectation of the crowd, then proclaimed with a mighty shout, his words echoing across the plain, "To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace." The sound of the various instruments, a rich tapestry of ancient melodies, would have then filled the air, a signal for universal prostration, a moment of absolute submission to the king's will. The threat of the fiery furnace, a terrifying consequence, hung heavy in the air, a chilling reminder of the king's absolute power and the brutal enforcement of his decrees. As the music swelled and the command was given, the vast multitude of people, nations, and languages, without hesitation, fell down and worshipped the golden image. The sight would have been overwhelming, thousands upon thousands bowing in unison, a wave of humanity prostrating themselves before the gleaming statue, a powerful display of conformity and fear. But amidst this sea of bowing figures, there stood three men, their heads held high, their faces perhaps etched with a quiet resolve, their bodies refusing to bend in homage to an idol. These were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Daniel's companions, men who had quietly maintained their faith amidst the cultural pressures of Babylon, men who now faced the ultimate test of their conviction. Certain Chaldeans, men who perhaps harbored resentment or envy towards the elevated positions of these Jewish exiles, seized this opportunity to accuse them before the king. Their voices, filled with malicious triumph, reported to Nebuchadnezzar that there were certain Jews whom he had appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had disregarded the king's decree. They neither served his gods nor worshipped the gold image he had set up. The king's face, upon hearing this accusation, would have darkened with fury, his immense power challenged by the quiet defiance of these three men. His decree was absolute, his authority unquestionable, and their refusal was a direct affront to his majesty. In his rage and fury, Nebuchadnezzar commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. Imagine them standing before the incandescent wrath of the most powerful man on earth, their demeanor calm, their eyes perhaps fixed on something beyond the king's earthly power. The king, his voice perhaps trembling with suppressed anger, asked them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace, and who is the God who will deliver you from my hands?" He offered them one last chance, a final opportunity to recant, to save themselves from a horrific death, his words laced with both threat and a hint of condescension, challenging the very power of their God. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, with a quiet dignity that defied the king's wrath, responded to Nebuchadnezzar, their voices clear and unwavering. "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up." Their words were not defiant in tone, but resolute in conviction, a quiet declaration of faith that transcended fear of death. They acknowledged God's power to deliver them, but also affirmed their unwavering loyalty even if deliverance did not come, a profound statement of trust that echoed across the plain. Upon hearing their steadfast refusal, Nebuchadnezzar's face contorted with fury, his expression changing from one of anger to one of incandescent rage. The furnace, which had been prepared for such an occasion, was commanded to be heated 7 times hotter than it was usually heated, an extreme measure to ensure the swift and agonizing death of these defiant men, and perhaps to serve as a terrifying warning to any who dared to question his authority. The flames would have roared with an intensified ferocity, casting flickering, ominous shadows across the faces of the onlookers, the heat radiating outwards, making the air shimmer and distort. The king then commanded certain mighty men of valor from his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. These 3 men, perhaps their hands bound with heavy ropes, their feet shackled, were led towards the gaping maw of the furnace, the intense heat already a palpable force against their skin. The air would have crackled with the energy of the roaring fire, the smell of burning fuel thick and acrid. So furious was the king's command, and so exceedingly hot was the furnace, that the flame of the fire killed those mighty men who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, consuming them as they approached the inferno. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace, a horrifying spectacle witnessed by the assembled masses, a testament to the king's merciless power. Nebuchadnezzar, watching the scene unfold, perhaps with a grim satisfaction, suddenly rose in haste, his face filled with astonishment. He spoke to his counselors, his voice perhaps a shocked whisper, "Did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and said, "Look, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." The king's voice, once filled with rage, now held a profound sense of wonder and fear, his eyes fixed on the impossible sight within the roaring flames. The 3 men, unbound and unharmed, were walking calmly amidst the inferno, and with them, a 4th figure, whose appearance was majestic and divine, a quiet presence of peace in the heart of the raging fire, a profound mystery unfolding before the eyes of the king and his astonished court, a quiet presence that seemed to whisper of enduring truths, of powers far beyond the grasp of earthly kings, inviting a deep and peaceful slumber to settle upon all who listen, a soft blanket of calm. A soft blanket of calm. The roaring flames, which had moments before consumed the king's mightiest soldiers, now seemed to part and dance around the 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, forming a shimmering, incandescent chamber within the furnace itself. The air, which should have been thick with the stench of burning flesh and scorching metal, instead carried only the dry heat of the fire, a heat that pressed in from all sides but did not touch them. Nebuchadnezzar, his face still streaked with soot and sweat from the earlier exertion of overseeing the execution, leaned forward on his throne, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe, unable to reconcile what he saw with any known reality. His advisors, the very men who had urged him to condemn the Hebrews, now huddled together, their whispers dying in their throats, their faces pale as parchment in the flickering, orange light. From his elevated position, the king could clearly see the 3 figures walking calmly within the heart of the inferno, their steps unhurried, their faces serene. The ropes that had bound them, woven from sturdy flax or hemp, had long since vanished into ash, yet their garments, their tunics of fine linen, their cloaks of wool, and their intricately patterned turbans, remained untouched, the colors vibrant and unmarred by the intense heat. Not a single hair on their heads was singed, nor did their skin bear any mark of the fire's fury. And then, as the king strained his eyes, a gasp escaped his lips, a sound echoed by the terrified murmurs of his court. There was a 4th figure, moving among them, a presence of such luminous grace that it seemed to diminish the very fire around it. His form was indistinct, shimmering like heat haze, yet undeniably there, a quiet companion to the three, and Nebuchadnezzar, his voice a hoarse whisper, declared that the fourth figure was like a son of the gods, a divine being walking unharmed in the very heart of his earthly punishment. A profound silence fell over the vast courtyard, broken only by the crackling of the distant flames and the occasional nervous cough from a guard. The king, who had so recently thundered with rage and absolute power, now felt a cold tremor of fear mixed with a dawning reverence. He rose slowly from his throne, his gaze fixed on the impossible scene, and began to walk towards the mouth of the furnace, his heavy, embroidered robes rustling softly with each step. The heat that radiated from the opening was still immense, a tangible force that pushed back against him, but he pressed on, his voice, now stripped of its former fury, calling out, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." His words, though still an order, were imbued with a new humility, a recognition of a power far greater than his own, a power that had so effortlessly defied his decree. And so, from the heart of the raging inferno, the three young men emerged, stepping out into the cool night air as if from a pleasant stroll. They walked with calm dignity, their faces composed, their eyes reflecting the lingering glow of the fire. The smell that clung to them was not of smoke or ash, but a faint, clean scent, perhaps of fresh linen, or simply the absence of any burning. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors, who had gathered in a terrified huddle, now pressed forward, their curiosity overcoming their fear. They examined the three men closely, their hands hovering, almost afraid to touch them. They saw with their own eyes that the fire had had no power over their bodies, that not a single hair was singed, that their cloaks were unblemished, and that there was no smell of fire upon them whatsoever. It was an undeniable miracle, a silent, powerful testimony that resonated through the cool Babylonian night. Nebuchadnezzar, his mind reeling, stood before them, a humbled monarch. His decree, which had been absolute law, had been utterly overturned by a higher authority. He then spoke, his voice carrying across the hushed courtyard, declaring a new edict. "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and defied the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve or worship any god except their own God." He went on to declare that any people, nation, or language that spoke anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would be cut in pieces, and their houses laid in ruins, for there was no other God who was able to rescue in this way. And so, the three young men, who had faced death for their faith, were not only spared but were promoted by the king, elevated to even higher positions within the province of Babylon, their lives now a living testament to the power of their unseen God. Years passed, flowing like the slow, muddy waters of the Euphrates, bringing with them changes to the great city of Babylon. The grandeur of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, with its hanging gardens and towering ziggurats, slowly faded into memory, and new kings ascended the throne, each leaving their own mark upon the sprawling empire. The empire itself, a vast tapestry of conquered lands and diverse peoples, began to show the first subtle signs of wear, like an ancient fabric fraying at the edges. Daniel, who had served Nebuchadnezzar with wisdom and integrity, continued to serve these subsequent rulers, his presence a steady, quiet anchor in the ever-shifting currents of court politics. He was a man of deep contemplation, his days marked by prayer and study, his nights often filled with dreams and visions that whispered of future events, of kingdoms rising and falling, of the ultimate triumph of a divine, eternal power. One such king was Darius the Mede, who came to power after the fall of Babylon to the combined forces of the Medes and Persians. The city, once impregnable, had fallen in a single night, a testament to the changing tides of power. Darius, a man of practical mind and keen administrative skill, immediately set about reorganizing his vast new dominion. He appointed 120 satraps to govern the various provinces, and over these satraps, he placed 3 administrators, with Daniel chief among them. It was a position of immense responsibility, overseeing the entire empire, ensuring that the king suffered no loss. Daniel, with his long years of experience, his reputation for incorruptible honesty, and his extraordinary wisdom, quickly distinguished himself. He possessed an excellent spirit, a quiet brilliance that shone through his every action, and the king, recognizing his exceptional abilities, began to consider setting him over the whole kingdom, a decision that would grant Daniel unprecedented power and influence. This elevation, however, stirred a simmering resentment among the other administrators and satraps. They were men of ambition, accustomed to the intricate dance of power and privilege, and they viewed Daniel, a foreign exile, with a mixture of envy and suspicion. They watched him, their eyes sharp and calculating, seeking any flaw, any misstep, any opportunity to bring him down. They searched diligently for any grounds for accusation against Daniel concerning the kingdom, poring over records, listening to whispers, scrutinizing his every decision. But their efforts proved fruitless. Daniel was a man of unwavering integrity, his work beyond reproach, his loyalty to the king absolute, and his administration faultless. There was no corruption, no negligence, no error to be found in his conduct. He was, in their own grudging admission, utterly trustworthy. Frustrated by their inability to find any fault in his public life, they finally conceded, their voices low and conspiratorial, that they would find no ground for accusation against this Daniel unless they found it in connection with the law of his God. They knew of Daniel's steadfast devotion, his daily rituals of prayer and worship, his refusal to compromise his faith for the sake of political expediency. And so, a wicked plan began to form in their minds, a scheme designed to exploit Daniel's piety and turn it against him. They approached King Darius, their faces carefully composed, their words dripping with feigned deference. "O King Darius, live forever," they began, their voices smooth as polished stone. They proposed a royal statute, a decree that would be binding throughout the entire kingdom, a law that would elevate the king to a position of ultimate reverence. Their proposal was simple, yet insidious. For 30 days, no one in the entire kingdom would be allowed to make a petition to any god or man except to King Darius himself. Anyone who dared to violate this decree would be cast into the den of lions. They presented it as a measure to strengthen the king's authority, to unite the kingdom under his singular rule, to demonstrate the absolute loyalty of his subjects. Darius, perhaps flattered by the notion of such universal homage, and unaware of the sinister motive behind the proposal, readily agreed. He signed the document, sealing it with his royal signet ring, making it an unchangeable law of the Medes and Persians, a decree that, once enacted, could not be revoked, not even by the king himself. The heavy wax seal, impressed with the king's emblem, solidified Daniel's fate, though he was yet unaware of the trap that had been laid. The news of the new decree spread quickly through the bustling streets of Babylon, carried by heralds and scribes, announced in the marketplaces and at the city gates. The air, usually filled with the clamor of commerce and the murmur of many languages, now carried the heavy weight of the king's new law. Daniel, in his quiet chambers, received the news, perhaps from a trusted servant, or perhaps he simply overheard the public proclamations. He knew the implications immediately. He knew that this decree was aimed directly at him, a calculated attack on his faith. Yet, his reaction was not one of panic or despair. As was his custom, 3 times a day, Daniel would go to his house, to his upper chamber where the windows were open towards Jerusalem. Jerusalem, the city of his ancestors, the place where the temple once stood, now a distant memory, a symbol of his heritage and his enduring hope. He would kneel there, his face turned eastward, his hands clasped, and offer his prayers and give thanks to his God. This was not a secret ritual, it was a well-known part of his daily life, a testament to his unwavering devotion. And so, even with the king's new decree hanging heavy in the air, Daniel did not deviate from his practice. He went to his house, he opened his windows, and he knelt down, just as he had always done, and prayed and gave thanks before his God. His voice, though perhaps a little softer than usual, was steady, his words flowing with the familiar rhythm of devotion, a quiet act of defiance against an earthly power, a profound affirmation of a higher allegiance. The conspirators, who had been watching Daniel's house with eager anticipation, saw him. They saw him go to his chamber, they saw the open windows, they heard the murmur of his prayers. Their trap had worked. They immediately rushed to the king, their faces alight with a cruel satisfaction. "O king, did you not sign a decree that for 30 days, any man who makes petition to any god or man except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions?" they asked, their voices feigning concern, yet barely concealing their triumph. Darius, perhaps feeling a flicker of unease, confirmed that the decree was indeed unchangeable, a law of the Medes and Persians that could not be altered. Then, with a dramatic flourish, they revealed their accusation. "Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, nor to the decree that you signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day." A cold dread settled over Darius as he heard their words. He realized, with a sickening lurch, that he had been tricked, that his own vanity had been used as a tool to condemn an innocent man, a man he deeply respected and admired. He was greatly distressed, his mind racing, trying to find a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day, from the moment he heard the accusation until the setting of the sun, laboring to deliver him. He explored every loophole, every possible interpretation of the law, every avenue of escape, but the law of the Medes and Persians was absolute, and his own word, sealed with his ring, could not be undone. As the last rays of the sun painted the western sky in hues of orange and purple, the conspirators returned, their faces grimly determined. "No, O king," they reminded him, their voices firm, that it is a law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or ordinance that the king establishes can be changed. Darius, his heart heavy with regret, knew he had no choice. With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of his entire kingdom, he gave the order. Daniel was brought before him, his face calm, his eyes steady, betraying no fear. The king, his voice filled with sorrow, spoke to Daniel, uttering words of hope even in this dire moment. "May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you." And so, Daniel was led away, through the bustling streets, past the towering walls of the city, towards the royal den of lions. The air grew cooler as evening deepened, and the sounds of the city began to fade, replaced by the rustling of the wind and the distant, low growls of the hungry beasts. The den itself was a formidable pit, likely a deep, circular excavation in the earth, perhaps lined with stone, its entrance covered by a heavy slab or grating, designed to contain the powerful predators. As Daniel stood at the edge of the pit, looking down into the darkness where unseen eyes glinted, a large stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king then sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet of his lords, ensuring that no one could tamper with the scene, that Daniel's fate was sealed, and that the law had been upheld. That night, King Darius returned to his palace, but sleep eluded him. The sumptuous royal chambers, usually a haven of comfort, now felt cold and empty. He passed the night fasting, refusing all food and entertainment, the sounds of the court musicians and dancers silenced. His mind was consumed with thoughts of Daniel, of the injustice he had allowed to happen, of the terrible fate that awaited his faithful servant. Sleep fled from him, and he tossed and turned, listening to the quiet murmurs of the night, perhaps hearing in his mind the low growls from the lion's den, the imagined sounds of Daniel's final moments. The hours stretched on, long and agonizing, until the first faint blush of dawn began to touch the eastern sky. As soon as it was light enough to see, the king rose from his bed, his face drawn and weary, and hurried to the den of lions. His steps were urgent, his heart pounding with a desperate hope, a fragile prayer that perhaps, somehow, Daniel's God had indeed intervened. When he reached the den, he approached the stone that sealed its mouth, his voice, filled with anguish, calling out into the darkness. "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" His question hung in the cool morning air, a desperate plea, a fragile whisper against the vast silence of the den. And then, from the depths of the pit, a voice answered, calm and clear, cutting through the king's despair like a ray of sunlight. "O king, live forever!" It was Daniel, his voice unmistakably whole, unharmed. "My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions," Daniel continued, his words echoing softly from the darkness below, "and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I have done no harm." The king's heart, which had been heavy with sorrow, now soared with immense joy and relief. He immediately commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. And so, with eager hands, the stone was rolled away, and ropes were lowered into the pit. Daniel was pulled up, emerging from the darkness, his body completely unharmed, not a scratch, not a bruise, not a single mark upon him. The lions, those fearsome predators, lay docile in the den below, their eyes perhaps watching him with a strange, quiet curiosity. It was clear to all who witnessed it that Daniel had trusted in his God, and his God had delivered him. Then, by the king's command, those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought forward. They, along with their children and their wives, were cast into the den of lions. Before they even reached the bottom of the pit, the lions sprang upon them, their roars filling the air, and broke all their bones in pieces, devouring them completely. The swift and brutal justice served as a stark and terrifying reminder of the consequences of treachery and of the protective power of Daniel's God. King Darius then wrote a decree to all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, a message carried by riders on swift horses to the farthest reaches of his vast empire. "Peace be multiplied to you," the decree began, its words echoing the profound change that had occurred in the king's heart. He declared that in every dominion of his kingdom, people were to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues, he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, he who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. And so, Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and during the reign of Cyrus the Persian, continuing to serve with wisdom and integrity, a beacon of faith in a foreign land, his life a testament to the enduring presence of a divine protector. The years continued to unfold, bringing with them the slow, inevitable march of time. The great empires of the world, like the shifting sands of the desert, rose and fell, their power waxing and waning, their glory fading into the annals of history. But Daniel, now an old man, continued to serve, his mind still sharp, his spirit unwavering. He had witnessed the reigns of several kings, seen the rise and fall of Babylon, and now served under the Medo-Persian Empire. His life was a long tapestry woven with threads of faith, wisdom, and divine intervention. He continued his daily rituals of prayer, his face turned towards the distant memory of Jerusalem, his heart connected to a God who had proven himself faithful through fiery furnaces and lions' dens. His days were filled with administrative duties, advising kings, interpreting dreams, and always seeking to understand the deeper mysteries of God's plan for his people and for the world. He would often retreat to his quiet chambers, perhaps in the cool evening hours, when the sounds of the bustling city had softened to a gentle hum. The oil lamps would cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating ancient scrolls and tablets, the air perhaps carrying the faint scent of parchment and dried herbs. He would read, he would meditate, he would pray, seeking guidance, seeking understanding. And sometimes, in those quiet moments, as the world outside drifted into slumber, he would receive visions, profound and often perplexing glimpses into the future, into the unfolding drama of human history and divine purpose. These visions, often filled with symbolic beasts and cosmic events, spoke of kingdoms yet to come, of conflicts and triumphs, of a final, glorious redemption. He would ponder these visions deeply, sometimes for days, seeking to decipher their meaning, to understand their implications for his people and for the world. He would write them down, carefully, meticulously, preserving them for future generations, a legacy of prophetic insight. The weight of these visions, the knowledge of future events, both glorious and terrible, might have burdened a lesser man. But Daniel carried it with a quiet strength, his faith providing an anchor in the midst of uncertainty. He understood that even in the darkest of times, even when empires crumbled and nations clashed, there was an overarching divine plan, a purpose that transcended human understanding. His life, from the moment he was brought as a young captive to Babylon, had been a journey of unwavering trust, a testament to the power of a God who walks with his servants through fire and through shadow, who closes the mouths of lions, and who reveals the secrets of the ages. His presence in the court, his quiet wisdom, his unshakable faith, served as a constant, gentle reminder to the kings he served, and to all who observed him, that there was a power beyond their earthly might, a truth that endured beyond the shifting sands of political power. And in those quiet moments, as the city slept, Daniel would often reflect on the journey, on the miracles he had witnessed, on the profound mysteries he had been privileged to glimpse. The memory of the fiery furnace, of the cool air within the flames, of the fourth figure walking among his friends, would come to him. The memory of the lion's den, of the soft fur of the great beasts, their warm breath on his face, their silent, watchful presence throughout the long night, would fill his thoughts. These were not just stories, they were lived experiences, etched into the very fabric of his being, shaping his understanding of God's faithfulness. He knew, with an unshakable certainty, that the God he served was a God who was intimately involved in the lives of his people, a God who heard their prayers, who protected them in times of danger, and who revealed his plans to those who sought him with a sincere heart. His long life, spanning decades of exile and service, was a living sermon, a quiet, powerful declaration of faith. He never preached with thunderous words, but with a life lived consistently, courageously, and with unwavering devotion. He was a man who understood the ebb and flow of empires, the rise and fall of human ambition, but he also understood the eternal, unchanging nature of the divine. And as the night deepened, and the stars began to glimmer like scattered diamonds across the vast Babylonian sky, Daniel would often drift into a peaceful slumber, his mind filled with the quiet certainty of God's presence, his dreams perhaps filled with visions of a future where all earthly kingdoms would give way to an everlasting reign of peace and justice, a profound and comforting thought that settled gently over his weary spirit, inviting a deep and peaceful slumber to settle upon all who listen, a soft blanket of calm, a quiet assurance that even in the deepest darkness, there is always a guiding light, a gentle hand leading towards rest, a profound sense of peace that permeates the very air, a quiet stillness that A profound sense of peace that permeates the very air, a quiet stillness that allows the mind to drift gently now, carried on the soft currents of a story that unfolds slowly, like the turning of ancient pages beneath the flickering light of an oil lamp, a story from a time long past, yet echoing with a timeless whisper of quiet strength and unwavering calm. We find ourselves now in the sprawling, sun-drenched, yet often cool and shadowed, city of Babylon, a place of immense power and intricate beauty, where the Euphrates River, wide and brown, flowed majestically through its very heart, its waters reflecting the towering ziggurats and the lush, terraced gardens that ascended towards the sky like verdant mountains. The air here, especially in the late afternoon, often carried the mingled scents of exotic spices from distant lands, the earthy aroma of sun-baked brick and clay, and the faint, sweet perfume of blossoming date palms that lined the canals crisscrossing the city. It was a city built on ambition and engineering marvels, its massive walls, so thick that chariots could race along their tops, encircling a vibrant, bustling world of merchants, scribes, soldiers, and artisans, all moving beneath the watchful eyes of colossal winged bulls carved from alabaster, guarding the city's many gates. Into this grand, sometimes overwhelming, tapestry of ancient life, a young man named Daniel had been brought, not by choice, but by the relentless tides of conquest, swept from his homeland of Judah, a land of rolling hills and olive groves, now left far behind. He was one of many, chosen for his intelligence, his noble lineage, and his promising appearance, destined to serve in the court of King Nebuchadnezzar, the mighty ruler of this vast Babylonian empire. The king, in his wisdom, or perhaps his calculated strategy, sought to integrate the brightest minds from his conquered territories into his own administration, to strengthen his realm with their talents and perhaps, subtly, to assimilate them into the Babylonian way of life, to soften their resistance with comfort and opportunity. That is where we leave our story tonight. These moments of quiet are yours, you have earned them. If easy drift sleep has become part of your night, subscribing keeps us close. Sweet dreams and rest well.